we can get started. I will share my screen. This one. And share. Okay, so we can see this, right? This window. So hopefully it's not too small. So the issue I'm designing for is this issue here, which is add an optional reason when dismissing a vulnerability. And a little background is that when you commit code in a merge request, we have tools in place to find any vulnerabilities that we know of in that code. And then we present it to you. And you can do a few things with it. One is nothing, just let it happen. And then it'll go into a dashboard or a list. You can dismiss them, basically saying these aren't problems. And then they will be persisted throughout the lifespan of your usage of GitLab as dismissed. You can create an issue and then discuss that vulnerability, or you could take action to fix it. Vulnerabilities, though, are not first-class objects in the way that issues are. So issues, you can do a lot of cool stuff with them. They're like linked across like MRs. They can be closed dynamically when you have the MR and it's merged. And they're not very specific as to like what to-dos are either. Like to-dos are kind of just like an alert, but then they kind of go away after you do something. So that just wanted to set a quick stage because vulnerabilities aren't quite there yet. They're still trying to be first-class objects, where we actually have a bunch of issues open to get them there. So the reason why this came up is that in the group security dashboard, so if you go to the GitLab org project, and then you can go to the security dashboard, you see this list of vulnerabilities that we found through the entire group. And if you click on one, you have the option to dismiss it and create an issue, like I said. You get all this great information. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And we have these quick options that are dismiss and create an issue right from here. And the reason why someone wants to add a reason is our security team and our customers are saying, well, it's dismissed, but we want to know the circumstances around it. Not just the fact that it's not a problem. Is it not a problem because this is a project that's not live, like it's not in production, so we don't care about vulnerabilities that happen there? Or is this a vulnerability that we know isn't a problem? And it also helps with compliance as well. So I made a prototype to walk through how this could work. Are there any questions before I dive into the prototype?
Awesome. I have a quick question. Sorry, when you're saying you're dismissing the vulnerability, did you mention that you're dismissing it like forever? Or like, do users need to just dismiss it in this instance, or are they just dismissing it, in all instances?
The thought is we don't really know yet, but the belief is, and the data we have shows that when it's dismissed, that's kind of like final. Like we're okay with it not ever being undismissed. And if this, let's say this particular vulnerability was dismissed, in the MR, if we do another commit and the vulnerability is not found, it's treated as fixed and it is no longer in this dashboard. So that's kind of like the tricky way around like working with MRs and vulnerabilities. But dismissed means that there's no need to ever like look at it or investigate it or come back to it. Kind of like a to-do when it's marked as done. Yeah. Okay.
That was great context. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So we have this prototype. The link is in the doc. And the second list item, the vulnerability, is the one that has all the action components on it. So if we just click on it, it'll open. and we get this modal. From here, we can dismiss it. And today, when you dismiss it, the modal just goes away. And then it's marked as dismissed in the dashboard. What we're proposing is keeping it open and allowing you to add a comment. So we've dismissed it. We get this nice image information, or the timestamp, we get who, and we get where. So let's add a comment. A good reason. We can cancel or we can just add it, so we will add it here. And now we've added our comment and it appears in the section below. And we have the option to edit it or remove it. If we edit it, we can just go in here and other reason and add it, and it adjusts. And then if we close, we see our finished product in the dashboard where it is dismissed with a little comment saying a good reason. Thinking that it will be able to go to 2 lines and then we'll start truncating probably. And that's pretty much it, but I can go through it again slowly. So we will dismiss. We'll add a comment.
Andy, could you ever just have that box open already for users, or is that just too much space?
Yeah.
I don't think I noticed that right away that I could comment.
So I had a version that had the box open, and a PM and a few other people in this group were like, no, we really want to make sure that it's optional. So they felt that the alternatives that I had that had like a text box open or just a general commenting box were going to be a little too forward for the user. They really forcing it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say maybe it's the placement of like the time stamp next to the comment. I feel like it's like, oh, someone just left a comment.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that this is not visible enough?
Yeah, I actually
noticed it right away. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't notice it either. I love this, by the way. I think this is so great. But I had the same thought about maybe if there's a way to show it more prominently, but still have it be clear it's optional. Because I went through it actually hoping to add a comment, and I knew that that option would be there just from reading the description, and I could not find it. And then I went through the whole thing again, and I was looking everywhere, and then I said, oh, that must be it. But it looked like I wasn't sure if it was a flag. I wasn't sure. And at first I just didn't notice it at all. So I do wonder if there's maybe other ways to show that it's optional, but I thought everything else was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've considered doing something. Let's open up this Pandora's box of Actor here. Similar to this, where there's a reason field. And then when you click that, it will take you into the editor. That wasn't like shot down, but they were saying they would like to see it a little more in the background as like an option. But I think if it's just an icon without supporting text and it doesn't look like a button, I think it does have the ability to be missed. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I get their point about wanting to make sure that it's obvious that it's optional. Something you might consider exploring is your placeholder test or text on that. Maybe that's enough.
Yeah, this is actually something that came up on something I was working on too. And I wonder if it's something that might be worth just kind of thinking about and discussing as a pattern across GitLab. What are the ways that we can show that something's optional?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's right, Sarah. And if you were to even using the placeholder text, I would try to, sorry, you guys have to educate me on this. How do we show like form fields that are optional?
So one pattern we're using, which is what I ended up going with, is we have the form field label, and then in parentheses, we have the word optional after it. Which I do like actually spelling it out and using text when possible, whether that's a label or placeholder text. I think Or even if instead of the comment icon, if it said add a comment actually written out, then I think that's always a way to make it really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are
like add optional comment.
I wonder. So I'd explore it a little bit. I think if you go with the button option, it's, you know, we always want to be concise with our button text, and the button kind of implies that it's optional because now I'm doing another thing. It's not as front and center at that point. Also, though, exploring the idea of building off the existing optional pattern for form fields. So even, and this, I'm not saying that this is the solution. I'm just trying to like be clear about what I'm saying. So even putting like in parentheses at the end of your placeholder text, optional,
mm-hmm.
could be another more obvious pattern.
Or to really follow the pattern, just add a label to that field and put the optional on the label would be another possibility, although it might add a little bit of vertical space.
Mm-hmm.
What I like about using labels and not just placeholder text is I've often encountered where once somebody clicks into the field and starts typing, the placeholder text goes away and then you lose that context. And I've definitely gotten lost in forms before, and I know sometimes our users might get lost too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, especially because all of this interaction is happening in such a limited space. Unlike working inside of GitLab, it's like a vast open country versus like working within the modal itself. I mean, there's plans to hopefully get rid of the modal. That is TBD.
I have a question on the full page view before you open the modal. Oh, I'll wait until you finish making your note though. Yeah, so this view, when the comment has been applied, so I guess it's after the modal, what's the importance of the comment? So if the user is going through this action to essentially disable this, is the comment really important? Like how much visibility is really what I'm getting down to? Should we have it here? Because when the comment is there, it's very visible.
Yeah, so I made it visible so that the list, while being scannable, you don't have to click into every dismissed vulnerability to see the reason why. And then that reason will hopefully, like, we could truncate maybe at 1 line or 2 lines so that it doesn't become this like, you know, giant list that's, you know, 2,000 pixels tall, but mainly for just scannability, because right now everything happens within the modal. So if we added a reason and then added it, instead of just seeing dismissed and then having to open the modal to see why, more or less just to see, oh, quickly, oh, I get it, Michael Scott says he has a reason. Yeah. Okay. And then, I mean, there is the option to show, like, there is just like a icon that shows that it is dismissed with a comment. And that might help collapse some of the vertical space.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting because the header itself is more subtle now because it's a little bit grayed out, but then the comment is not. And so we've got different variations of darkness and lightness of font. So what I wanted to know is, you know, is it the comment that's the most important? But then it's a comment about something that you're disabling. And so kind of a conflict of interest there of what am I wanting to see when I'm on this page? What is the main focus here?
Mm-hmm. Ideally, the main focus would be the active vulnerabilities, and the dismissed vulnerabilities would then be a part of their own list. That issue has not yet hit the milestone, so we won't be doing that. hopefully that the dismissed vulnerabilities here would be aggregated in a separate list so that you can go and look through those. Maybe there it's more appropriate to see the full reason without clicking into it versus here, right? Because it's going to be a mix. The focus is going to be on the active vulnerabilities, these ones here.
Was it the text color that was throwing you, Valerie?
Well, one, we're giving it more real estate space, but if it's not the priority content of that page, I mean, it is within this moment because the user just added the comment, but every time after that a user goes to this page, are we allocating too much real estate for something that's less important, plus the different variations of color?
Mm-hmm. I think in context of fixing vulnerabilities, it's less important, but it is important in the context of dismissed vulnerabilities, so that grouping might be able to help. But I agree, it might not need all this space, especially if this is just like jam-packed with text and then like another one is jam-packed with text, right? It might get daunting to even want to read it. I was in a way referencing our activity feed and how it's just short. Like if there's a comment, it's like, oh, okay, here's a quick comment, here's the info about that comment, and then onwards. But it's probably a completely different, well, it is a completely different use case here than it is in the dashboard, right?
Andy, can you group all the dismissed vulnerabilities together and then have that log more front and center within that? Like, I don't know if there's tabs on that page. I'm not really familiar with it, but so you could just kind of like toggle quickly to the dismissed log, and then maybe it's not as confusing if there's a lot of comments on it that you could see up front, because you're like, I want to see all the dismissed vulnerabilities. I want to know, I want that context of why these were all dismissed.
Mm-hmm. We can't group them today for a few back-end reasons, but we do have designed and planned, and the front end is ready with a way to just see either all dismissed or all active. But if they were all dismissed, I think showing the log might be beneficial. But in this context, it might not be beneficial to see, you know, the actual details of the dismissal as opposed to, oh, it's dismissed. Oh, there's a comment I can see, and then, oh, a comment would appear here, right?
Or even maybe being able to like filter out the dismiss, but that might not be MVC, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have the ability to filter this list in the future by dismissed or active, just not today. Just not in the cards. It's my dream one day to be able to filter this list.
So what are some reasons people dismiss often? Just curious.
So one is all security tools are just looking for like this. It's almost like a binary relationship between, is this a vulnerability or is this not? And oftentimes they will flag something called a false positive. And it happens with like every software product that's using any kind of security tool or security scanning. So if it's a known false positive, the industry will know it and it'll be made aware. They can come in here and just say, oh, that's not a thing. We don't need to investigate it. We don't need to waste time on trying to get it out of our code. We just like whitelist it is another term. And then they'll dismiss the vulnerability. Another is that the vulnerability might not be in a project that's affected. So these are all in the community edition. But we have vulnerabilities that might be just in a sub project that is just, you know, someone's sandbox, or it could be like in tests at Java Gradle. Like that's not in production. So it's okay that this ECB mode insecure is there. Like no big deal. We don't care about it.
I'm wondering, I mean, this is probably not MVC either. I was just seeing in my head, I'm almost seeing like quick replies. I wonder if that would be useful, just so you just like you click a common reason for dismissing, and then the only time you really have to add a detailed comment is like, I don't see the reason listed here. I don't know if that would be useful. It might just be interesting if it is, if you can group together like common reasons why people are dismissing.
I think that's a great idea. We'll have to, that's something that we would probably want to like do some research on, right? And then think about a quick action or a quick reply. I like that idea.
Then I almost in my head, okay, I don't want to be prescriptive, but I see like, you know, like tagged as different things, and then you could sort by those reasons and see patterns there, which would be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Andy, do any of the vulnerabilities have comments or notes apart from when this idea when they're being dismissed?
No, this would be the first implementation of being able to comment on a vulnerability. I threw out the idea of just a general comment. So we would just have a general comment area inside of the vulnerability itself. But it was very specific that the comments are always geared towards reasons why it's dismissed, not necessarily let's put a comment here and discuss the vulnerability, because in that case, they would just open an issue and start talking about the vulnerability itself, where you can have like a more facilitated conversation and get all the features of the discussion area.
So that's one thing that I've noticed as this discussion has been going on, has been fluctuating back and forth between comment and reason as the label for it. For me personally, reason resonates more, particularly for that reason. When you first said it was when you're on the screen and you said it was a comment, I then expected it to be a threaded thing that I could reply to. Whereas a reason in this case is, I'm assuming it's just going to be a one-off thing and not threaded. So reason resonates a little bit more with me than comment.
Yeah, I considered thinking about changing the button language, and maybe just being more overt with it might be more helpful too, right? So instead of the popover saying add a comment, it could say add a reason, and then changing this button language to add reason. That could be possible. I don't mind that.
While you're on this modal, and I think you and I chatted about this the other day, Andy, so I want to see if anybody else has thoughts or feedback on this, especially people who know the design system better than I do, which is, oh, Sarah, it's you. Oh, and Amelia is on here too. I just can't see her face right now. So if I remember, the pattern is you dismiss, and then it does something in the main body of the modal, and then you got to go back to the 3 buttons at the bottom and kind of almost like dismiss it. Can you show us that interaction again?
Let's see, undo dismiss. So if I click on dismiss, it will give me these. I click on add a comment. This is a poor rendition of the default version of add a comment. It should be disabled. And then when you are adding, these are now disabled. So it tries to balance 5 buttons within a 100 pixel area as much as possible.
And then add a comment. And then what do I do next?
You would close, which I created an issue to remove this button, create issue, when you click dismiss. So the thought is that you would only have these 2 buttons after that issue gets discussed, because this is like, I've also, like, I don't know, it's you're asking them to close, could say done, but they're not necessarily done.
Would it be,
go ahead.
I'm wondering a couple things. One, I'm wondering if it's possible to add the comment, and if they've typed something in that field, then there won't necessarily need to be an add comment or cancel button. It's just whether they've typed in it or deleted it. And I wonder if close, if they've added a comment, could change to add comment and dismiss.
So the first idea is that it's just an open form. And then the save action would be add comment and dismiss, or where was that? I'm just mixing those up.
Yes, and close personally, I wouldn't know if it was going to save my change to dismiss it. I would consider maybe testing if dismiss and would be sort of the default state, and then instead of close and add comment and dismiss could be a way to eliminate some of those other buttons, but still confirm, yes, we recognize that you've added a comment, we're saving it.
Yeah, I really like that.
Or save comment and dismiss.
Yeah, I don't like the term close here, because close has other connotations to like issues and merge requests. I'm not a fan of using the word close here. And before, this button actually was cancel. And that doesn't make any sense once you've done something. So I think, was it add a comment and dismiss is actually good. It's a really good idea. Let's see. We'll have to have the undo. I would love to get rid of this. And because no one creates an issue after a vulnerability is dismissed, it would just be like, it wouldn't make any sense. You would undo it and then create the issue. Okay, a lot to think about, but really good feedback.
So you did an outstanding job of giving us context and walking us through all of this. It was so super clear, so really nice work. You also did a great job of taking a lot of feedback in, and thank you everybody for giving feedback. This was really good feedback.
Yeah, I have a lot to think about, but thank you very much.
This is great. Awesome. Thank you, Andy. And this is really helpful too for at least personally stuff that I'm working on with similar patterns.
Yeah, glad to help.
I was about to say the same. I learned so much from you from this. This was great.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you,
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Bye.